Welcome to the Beaumont City Council meeting for December 3rd, 2019. It's 5:02 p.m. This is closed session. Can we have call to order, please?
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Carroll?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Here.
Mayor Martinez?
Here. Do we have any public comment today?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. City Attorney, can you read our items for discussion?
Yes, item 2 is conference with legal counsel regarding pending litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.91 and/or 2 and/or 3 workers' compensation case number COBT 002935 and COBM 0094. Item number 3 is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. City designated representatives, City Manager Todd Parton, and Administrative Services Director Carrie Mendoza, employee organizations, police management, managers, professional, technical as individuals, and that's it.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll adjourn to closed session. May I have all the order, please?
I just want to make sure you got that.
Oh, my goodness. Heaven.
thought it was pretty bad. You know, when you see 6 point something on here, you know there's trouble. Oh, there you go. Heads up. We've returned to normal.
Are you healed? Are you contagious? Good. Well, I'm staying far away from him too. Nancy, you're between the two bad guys.
Hey, here you go. I'm ready. Hey, Julio. I'm ready. Go ahead. With the mask
We are
on.
returning from closed session. Can we have a report out, please, City Attorney?
Yes, item number 2 was conference with legal counsel regarding pending litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1 and/or 2 and/or 3, workers' compensation case number COBT 002935 and COBM 0094. There was no reportable action. Item number 3, conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. City designated representatives, City Manager Todd Parton, and Administrative Services Director Carrie Mendoza. The employee organizations, police management, managers, professional, technical as individuals, and there was no reportable action on that item either, and that's the report out.
All right, thank you. And with that, we are going into regular session at 6:04 p.m. for December 3rd, 2019. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember White. Here. Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos. Mayor Martinez.
Here. And with that, Mrs. Carroll, will you do our Pledge of Allegiance for us?
Hand over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance
All right, thank you. Do we have any conflict of interest disclosure? Do we have any requests to adjust the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will go to announcements and recognition. We have introduction of the new police employees. Excellent. Chief?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much. So as they're making their way up, I'm very excited and proud to present to you Riley Godfrey, Chris Lee, and Kevin Fowler. If I may, I'll just tell you briefly about some of their background. So Riley Godfrey is a graduate from La Serna High School, grew up in the city of Whittier, California. She completed the Golden West Police Academy in 2015. She gained a very unique experience working as a park ranger for the Downey Police Department. After graduating the academy. She was then hired as a police officer for the city of Indio Police Department in 2018, so she's a lateral. She comes with about 2 years experience. Her hobbies include camping and hiking, playing soccer, spending time with her family, going on adventures with her girlfriend Autumn and their dogs Indy and Hank. So, right in there.
Welcome.
So Chris Lee grew up in this Riverside area. He was a Riverside Sheriff's Explorer throughout his high school years. Graduated from Canyon Springs High School in Moreno Valley. He's a veteran of the United States Air Force. He then went to work in Arizona at the Marana Police Department. It's a little suburb of Tucson. He was there for about 14 years. He worked in SWAT K-9, field training officer, corporal, and motorcycle patrol officer. He also was a detective with the Pinal County, Arizona Sheriff's Office. He had retired after a 24-year career in law enforcement in Arizona, but not before being awarded the Medal of Valor. He's a graduate from the Central Arizona College with an associate's degree, and he's currently working on his undergraduate from California Coast University. So I present to you Chris Lee. certainly last but not least this evening is Kevin Fowler. He's a graduate from Seminole High School, so he's a native of the Inland Empire. Attended Crafton Hills College, and then later transferred to Seminole Valley College, where he achieved his associate's degree in administration of justice. He self-sponsored himself through the Seminole Valley Extended Police Academy. Immediately upon graduation, was hired by the Indio Police Department as well. He's worked there since September of 2014, and he's a resident in the city of Beaumont with his wife, Montserrat. So I present you Kevin Fowler. Very excited to start in the snow and the rain. An Indio that never sees snow. So they asked what the white stuff was on Thanksgiving. Snow, welcome to Beaumont.
All right.
Well, very good. I've been getting a lot of missed calls. I wonder if it's the mayor of Indio that's complaining. I don't know. Very welcome. Well, welcome. Welcome. Thank you, Chief. All right, and with that, brings us to the public comment period. Do we have public comment?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so any one person may address the city council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the city clerk. There is a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person, and state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action brought up by your comments. And with that, we will open public comment period at 6:09 p.m.
It's Roger Berg.
Mayor and council members, September 5th, I put in a public information request. It's almost 3 months now. I still haven't gotten most of the things I've asked for. I've gotten very few of them.
Nicole.
The big thing is, and this is nothing against the city staff, they've been fine, but the city clerk and the city attorney are stonewalling me on getting my information that I've asked for. I've asked for a copy of any emails when you hired Mr. Pinckney as the city attorney. Now, 3 of you weren't on the council then. Lloyd White had copies of the emails, claims they don't exist. They exist. I want to see them. I want to see the AB 1600 reports for the dump that were remitted to W.R. Cox from the city. I mean, I'm asked for documentation on the settlement agreement. It's already a done deal. You guys, I always want to know what's going on here, where's the emails, and what happened. And if you'd be hired about attorney privilege, maybe not, but that, Mr. Pinckney was not your city attorney when he was applied for the job. And those things are open. When I was on this council, I got lots of people coming here and soliciting things, and they were sending email forms, sometimes they were phone calls, sometimes they were letters. They're all public documents. They're written. And they need to be provided. Almost 90 days now. I've been getting bits and pieces, but I'm sorry, that's not enough. I've waited long enough. Please direct your city staff to comply with the law and give me what I asked for. I have nothing against anybody. I just want to see the stuff and be done with it, okay? If it's legitimate, fine, but please, don't hold me back and sit there and act like I don't know anything. And it's not against the city staff, they've been wonderful. But please, Mr. City Clerk, I need my information, and I'm entitled to it. If it's not allowable, then tell me why and put it in writing so I can go the other route. I want to finish this thing up. I think 3 months is long enough. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
Mayor, may I make a clarification?
Yes, a quick comment.
I thought he wasn't allowed to speak.
It is a public record. We've talked about this in council before, that we did
Wait a
not.
minute, I thought he
we did
wasn't
not.
allowed to speak. Didn't you state that the council's not allowed to comment?
No, the council can briefly comment on remarks made by the public under the Brown Act.
We
but it
cannot-
should be brief.
Yeah, and we cannot discuss.
It will be
or
brief.
take
I
action.
just want to say, as I've said before, our contact when we hired Mr. Pinckney was by telephone, and I did not record any of the calls. There were no emails between Mr. Pinckney and I while we were going through the hiring process. So I just wanted to reiterate that, something I've said before. Just want to put it out there again, just to take a little heat off the staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next speaker.
No other speakers.
No more.
No further speak. Okay, I will close public comment at 6:12 p.m. All right, so if you notice, we changed the agenda a little bit tonight, and we did that so that we can have the final action item as our reorganization for the city council. So bear with us as we tried a different format, probably just for tonight. All right, so that brings us to council reports. What do you think is to be permitted? It might be. Any have any volunteers, or you want me to go down the list?
Anything you want to?
All right, seeing none, Ms. Carroll, you can start us.
I had to start last time. No,
Oh.
okay. The Finance and Audit Committee, we met last night. I'm sure that probably later on, some of it will be addressed by our treasurer. But I thought it was a very good meeting. We had discussion on the financial reports, and we had discussion on our list of priorities. We still are treating the CFD as a priority. I don't want to steal the treasurer's fire, but we really did progress, I think, on it. So I think we're going to roll into next month and actually start to get some documentation out of what we have as our list. And that pretty much was it. I'm sure I've forgotten something because I'm first, but
Oh.
usually when other people comment, I go, oh yeah, I went to that. So I'll let it go.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Mr. Lara?
I attended the SCAG meeting yesterday. I mean, not the SCAG, excuse me, the WRCOG meeting. You'll be getting an email regarding a SCAG regional transportation plan. Just if you have time, take a look at that. It's an interesting read. Also, I just wanted to let you know that, gosh, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, ran into a property owner of one of the homes that does the Christmas lights across the street. They were very complimentary of Ashley and the city's efforts in getting their permits and getting them taken care of. And so they had some concerns last year that it'd be difficult this year, but city staff was excellent in what they did. So I just wanted to share that and pass that along. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lara. Mr. Santos?
Nothing to report. No activities for past 2 weeks.
Okay. Mr. White?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Just a few things on my list. I missed the Finance and Audit Committee last night. I have a touch of the flu, so I'm trying to conserve my energy. And Mrs. Carroll has her hand sanitizer lined up here, so I think. But anyway, so I went to the RCTC Budget Implementation Committee to alternate for Mr. White. That was a very informative committee. We received and filed the long-range transportation study and sent that to commission for approval. And we modified the bylaws of the Citizens and Specialized Transit Advisory Council, and again sent that for commission approval. Participated, my son and I went to the Thanksgiving dinner packing and distribution. And as always, it's really nice to see families come out and help not only pack the dinners, but deliver them out to the residents of Beaumont and Cherry Valley. So thank you for all the staff and your hard work on that. RCA, we received a clean and unmodified report, audit 2019 audited financial statement. No findings and no internal control issues. So we received that. The species of the month, the Riverside Ferry shrimp. Have to deal with that one. And I'll talk more about my term as mayor towards the end of the action items. All right, and that's to conclude my report. Legislative updates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the monthly report for the month of November. As we've previously discussed, the state legislature, luckily for us, is out of session. They reconvene in January on the 6th. And we expect a fast and furious legislation session coming up because it's an election year. So what happens in an election year is they have self-imposed quicker deadlines on getting through committees as well as appropriations processes so that all the bills can basically be voted on prior to the different candidates hitting out on the campaign trail. So know that this one will be a little bit more fast and furious than last year. Some of the keynotes of this update is the state is still expecting a budget surplus of around $7 billion. If that happens, then that'll roll off to the bottom line and leave the state with around $18 billion in a rainy day fund, which is good from the state's perspective as we enter into a potential downturn within the next year or two or three or so. Significant work up there being discussed on utility power shutoffs, obviously based on what's occurring within Northern and Southern California. And there's some significant legislation that we are definitely watching, which is Senate Bill 667, and that's in help and aid of the Cal Recycle Organics Recycling Program. So there were a Senate bill and Assembly bills passed that sets forth the Cal Recycle Program. 667 by Senator Huso is looking for strategies to help and incentivize local agencies to comply with the regulations under the Organic Recycling Program. So they are looking for feedback from bill supporters and stakeholders. So we're going to be reading through that and then providing council with kind of an update on where staff sits on how to best see this legislation through that helps incentivize and encourage cities to comply with that law. At the federal level, at the last hour on November 21st, the Senate did approve a continuing resolution to fund the government again for about a month, so that gets us to December 20th. One potential outcome of these series of extensions and continuing resolutions is they're talking about at a federal level just running a spending bill that basically continues the current spending levels that were established last budget for this entire year, because they're just not reaching an agreement on spending platforms and so forth. So we'll kind of see what's going on with that. On the 15th of November, Senator Harris from California, who recently, I think today, dropped out of the presidential candidate race, indirectly proposed a Wildfire Defense Act at the federal level. And what that would do is provide around $1 billion nationwide to try to get ahead of wildfires and provide revenues down to local municipalities and regional agencies to use technology and other strategies to help prevent wildfires versus what we're doing now, which is just reacting. The numbers out of her office, take that for what it's worth, say that for every dollar spent on prevention, it'll save $6 from FEMA on disaster recovery. So we're anxious to kind of see what that's all about. There's some water legislation, homelessness, and then lastly is the sales tax legislation that we've been monitoring closely since last year. It's probably going to come back in January, so we'll be apprised of it. What we were able to determine is there is a contingent or a coalition of opponents to that sales tax legislation, and that's the one that would change sales tax within the state of California from point of sale to point of delivery. So the different cities that have online or distribution facilities that act at point of sale would be very hurt or negatively affected by that type of legislation. So you can see from the list, Fresno, Dinuba, I don't even know where that is, Ontario, Emeryville, the city of Paris, obviously, and Signal Hill all thrive on that point of sale. So they're leading the opposition on the concept to reappropriate sales tax. So we're going to keep a look on that. And then lastly are the different grant opportunities and different funding opportunities that are upcoming that staff as well as Townsend will be researching and applying for on behalf of the city. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Wasinski? All right, thank you. All right, with that, City Treasurer report. Let me see. Oh, well, Economic Development, do you want to come back?
Should have stood there.
Yeah, I forgot.
Because it's going to be really short. Economic Development Committee is next week, so I don't have anything to report for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, City Treasurer.
Okay, let me see.
Councilmember Carroll covered that. Councilmember I could use an assistant. I don't know if you can hold two jobs.
Holy
Let
smokes.
me go through. One of the big discussions we had last night,
You're going to pay for this.
I know I will, was about the audit report that's due, and the desire of the council to get it this year on a timely fashion. February is the goal. So the finance director has gone through the whole timeline of where we are. The caveat is we should be able to do this if the auditors can deliver it on time, because Jeff is set up to be able to do his review over the holidays, get it to us, the Finance Audit Committee, other than 3 days before like we did last year, which doesn't give you a chance to put any input in or review. So it looks like we'll be on target to get it to the council probably the second meeting in February. Committee assigned council tasks, we reviewed those, and the one that came up that we're still pursuing at this time, we're pursuing all of those, but the one that's the most active is the CFD, and we will be looking at going to some realtors. That's our next step, is to get some input from either the Realtor Association or some large realtors to get their feedback on this thing to be able to move forward to the next steps. The last action we took was the committee dismissed our alternative member, Andrew Forrester. He was a non-attendant since February. So the committee voted and we had a majority vote on that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Trick.
make a comment?
Yes.
Now see how much I left for you. I was just a warm-up.
I
that's
just
all.
needed something.
All right, City Clerk?
Just wanted to report that our staff is working diligently to fulfill Mr. Berg's request along with the many others we get, and I appreciate the fact that he did not attack the staff tonight. Thank you. That's all I.
City Attorney report?
Nothing to report this evening.
City Manager? Yes.
Oh, I'm surprised. Gosh, I wasn't ready for this. So, the most important news is the Broncos are no longer in the cellar in the division. That's,
How much did you pay the referee for that one?
there's a little payback. There's 6 other games that should have gone their way. So, and even better news, the Raiders are still the Raiders. So remember, Gruden only has 5 more years left on that contract. No, 8 more years left on that contract. Be good.
You're lucky you're not an elected official. You'll never get voted that way.
So some even better news is that scheduled for this Thursday, December the 5th, and Friday, December the 6th, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day, St. Francis Electrical is scheduled to be out at an intersection located at 2nd Street and Commerce to start to install some new traffic signals to provide for some left turns. So I think that's been a problem area that we've addressed or have been hearing about for quite some time. So they will be out there early, working through those days. So they'll be doing and trying to get in out as quick as they can. They'll have some interim flashing lights and some stop signs set up to try to mitigate the traffic congestion while they're out there working. So that includes reprogramming as well as the installation of those heads that are coming in out there. So that's probably some of the biggest news we have to share with you. So,
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, I was going to. Go ahead.
Okay, you won't be putting any signs up on when it's supposed to be done?
Yes, we've got several signs going up, and they've got your picture on them. We've taken your glamour shot, coming.
Fall of 92 or something?
No, so December the 5th and Friday, December the 6th of 2019 is when they're scheduled to be out there. Okay. So.
It's a start.
No.
Give or take a month or two, right?
A little elasticity there.
And the most amazing thing about the Riverside County Ferry Shrimp is they come with these little bitty tongs for barbecues. So. That concludes my report.
You see what happens when you give them an audience? You know, we do it at 11 o'clock and there's no one here.
You do the comedy night next year.
That concludes my report, Mayor, Council.
All right, I would say thank goodness, but anyway, all right. Thank you for that traffic signal update, though. That's been a much needed improvement for a long time. Okay, so consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion here or at the end of action items. Do we have any requests to speak on consent? Do we have any requests from council to pull an item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Protem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. And with that, that brings us to the public hearings. Item number 15. To hold a public hearing and consider an amendment to Table 17.03-3, permitted uses in the base zone district, and Table 17.03-4, permitted uses in overlay zone districts, large family daycare. Hello.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a proposed amendment to the use tables in both the base zone district and the overlay districts to allow large family daycares as a permitted use. Effective January 1, 2020, the state of California legislature passed Senate Bill number 234, which requires large family daycares to be treated as residential uses in residential zones and requires local jurisdictions to treat the large family daycares the same as they would small family daycares. A large family daycare allows up to 14 children. They do require fire department clearance prior to operation. Currently, the Beaumont Municipal Code specifies a conditional use permit is required by approval by the Planning Commission prior for a large family daycare to operate. As of January 1, 2020, Senate Bill 234 prohibits this requirement. As a result of this legislation, staff has prepared the amendments you see before you. On November 12th, 2019, the City of Beaumont Planning Commission held a public hearing and forwarded a recommendation of approval of the proposed changes to the City Council. Staff recommends City Council hold a public hearing and approve amendments to Table 17.03-3, permitted uses in base zone district, and Table 17.03-4, permitted uses in overlay zone districts for large family daycares. I'm available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have public comment on
No, we do not.
Okay, questions from council?
So my understanding is that the city no longer has regulation control over the large family daycares.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So it's, so the people who are going to protect the children in those homes is the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when there's complaints or lawsuits, the state gets the complaints and the lawsuits?
Yes, sir, we would direct complaints that would come in to community care licensing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Question, Mr. Santos?
Quickly on this daycare, on this, does it apply on the, on the HOA
Yeah.
community?
Yes, so the text of the legislation says that any HOAs or CCNRs that would previously prohibit this type of use from taking place are now void.
Okay, thank you.
No, go ahead. Here, question, Mr. Lara?
No, that's fine.
Does that include the age HOAs that are active living, 55 plus?
So the text does not specify those are excluded, so I would think that it does apply to those as well. I defer to the city attorney for a more strict interpretation, but I believe that's correct.
Okay. And then as far as regulation, since we said that complaints are directed to the state, that's the same as regulation. So if they have 45 kids there and people are complaining, the state has to be the one that comes in and deals with it.
Correct.
Okay. Question?
Just a follow-up on the mayor's question. The 55-plus communities cannot prevent a large daycare of up to 14 kids?
I don't believe they can. Section 597.41 provides that every provision in a written instrument, which would include CC&Rs, relating to real property that purports to restrict the conveyance, encumbrance, leasing, or mortgaging of real property for use or occupancy as a family daycare home is void, and every restriction in that written instrument as to the use or occupancy of the property as a family daycare home is void, as a matter of state law.
All right. Okay, Ms. Carroll?
Christine, maybe you don't know the answer to this, but are there any changes between the smaller daycare and the larger daycare in terms of public safety, getting the children out because there's more children, a ratio of people that have to help? Do you know if there's any other requirements like that that would at least bump up and protect the children more?
I don't know that there are. What I do know is that the fire department is required to go and inspect for those types of issues, whether it's a small daycare or a large daycare. Whether or not the checklist looks the same, I wouldn't be able to tell you because those requests don't even come in through planning or anything like that. It goes directly through like the fire marshal's office or our fire safety specialist. They go out and remit directly to the state. The city receives basically a letter from the state of California Community Care Licensing that says this address has been permitted for X type of daycare, whether it's a small family or large family daycare, and we just keep it on file with that address.
And I think we did talk about this with the 55-plus communities some time ago, and I did write letters saying that overriding that was infringing on what people assumed was going to be their retirement years, maybe not sandwiched between two daycare facilities. But unfortunately, we're at this position where the local control has been removed. So, thank you.
All right, any further questions or discussion? If not, I didn't open a public hearing, I don't think.
One quick one.
All right, go ahead and let's do that and I'll open it.
Can we do some additional research? I just want to make sure, because as you read that bill, it talks about the fire marshal doing the inspections. The concern that I have of the state fire code, they don't enforce typically the state building codes, which are also referenced there, but they're removing that authority from the cities. So the exiting can be an issue. The square footage per occupant can be an issue. If you're looking at 14 kids, and that's just the kids alone, you're looking at an occupant space of about 450 square feet, and they don't dictate or determine the minimum size of home that this could be in.
Correct.
So there are some safety concerns that I have that the state keeps pushing these things down on local jurisdictions. And so anything you can look at just to try to make it as safe or at least communicate with fire marshals as much as possible.
Will do.
Thank you.
One last comment. This was voted on 9 times, and there was only one no vote in all 9 times that it was voted on by the Assembly.
All right, so I didn't open public comment, so I'll need to open public comment at 6:30, or public hearing at 6:36. Do we have any members that want to speak at this point? Okay, if not, then we'll close at 6:36 p.m., and I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendments to the table. Let's not all rush.
Did you make the motion? I'm sorry.
No, I'm entertaining a motion.
Okay.
Need one.
I'll make a motion to approve amendments to table 17.03-3, permitted uses in the base zone district, and table 17.03-4, permitted uses in overlay zone districts for large family daycares.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. And with that, item number 16, conduct a public hearing and consider development agreement plan 2019-0036 for a 2.89 million square foot industrial business park, Hidden Canyon Industrial Park, located at the western terminus of 4th Street, south of State Highway 60, east of Jackrabbit Trail.
Before you tonight is a consideration of a request for a development agreement to facilitate the development of the Hidden Canyon specific plan. The most recent approval for this project is Plot Plan 2018-0134, originally approved on November 13th, 2018, and extended by the Planning Commission on October 8th, 2019 for an additional year, with its expiration date being now November 13th, 2020. The site has been subject to other various entitlement activities. As listed in the staff report, there have been several different projects. The most recent and current valid entitlements are for the Hidden Canyon Industrial Specific Plan, which was originally entitled in 2005 with an amendment to that specific plan in 2012. There have been a series of plot plan approvals that have been approved by the Planning Commission. The city's municipal code allows for approval of a plot plan for 1 year with a possible 1-year extension of that plot plan by the Planning Commission at a public hearing. We have been through, I believe, 6 public hearings on this, so 3 entitlements with 3 additional year extensions on each. The applicant is requesting a development for this project. The guidelines for the development agreement are established in Resolution 1987-34. The request of the applicant for this development agreement are 2 main points. The first is extension of the entitlements for Plot Plan 2018-0134 for a period of 7 years from the current expiration date, which would then establish an expiration date of November 13th, 2027, and the allowance of assignment or transfer of the development agreement upon completion of sale of the property. The other entitlements that have been approved for this site do not expire. The specific plan and EIR are in effect and valid in perpetuity as long as there are no changes to the proposed project or the scope of the project. Currently, there are no unusual or changed circumstances at this site that would affect the entitlements, and the current approved plot plan is accurately reflective of what was approved in the specific plan and the EIR. At its meeting on November 12, 2019, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing for this item and has forwarded a recommendation of approval of the development agreement to the City Council. Resolution governing development agreements requires that findings be made. Staff has been able to make all of the required findings in a positive manner. At this point, staff would recommend that council hold a public hearing and approve development agreement plan 2019-0336. I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant is also available in the audience.
All right, thank you. I will open public hearing at 6:40 p.m. Do we have speakers?
Yes, we do. Bruce McDonald.
Good evening, council members. Good to see you, staff. Assuming this is the temporary council quarters. Right? I'm Bruce McDonald, 1140 Pacific West Highway, Laguna Beach. So my company with USA is purchasing this property. We developed the property adjacent and to the east with Wolverine and Amazon. The owner is in the room tonight. They go by Lassen. And a couple things I want to point out to you. Going through Planning Commission, we realize, and so the Planning Commission, that they don't want to see the same site plan with no changes keep coming through. That was their view. My view is the development agreement allows us suitable time to use our resources and the city's to plan a major project and execute a major project without coming back unless we make changes to the approved site plan. The EIR and specific plan that currently exists on the project is valid and has no expiration date. We have conditions of our project under the site plan that we must comply to, and anything substantially that changes there, we've got to come back and do an addendum to the EIR or revisit any environmental impacts. We are looking to start the project this year, this upcoming year, put in a significant amount, approximately $10 million of street improvements, public improvements, and another $3 million as we finish our first building, and we plan that in the second year. it'll take at least 5 years to finish the project, kind of like how Crossroads went for us. And one thing I think is very important to point out is it's no cost to the city. This agreement isn't asking for any special favors. No locked development fees, any fees that are then in place for our development. When we're ready to pull building permits, will be assessed the applicant. There's no bond financing for any of the public infrastructure. We're paying all cash for the streets. So we'd appreciate it. The ownership has signed the agreement in its current form, and there's a resolution that allows you to execute it as well without any appeal period, because it's not a CEQA action. A development agreement is not within the CEQA vernacular, I should say. So I appreciate staff's help on this. Carol and Christina did great for us to get it here, and it's really important for us that you visit this and see it the way we've applied for. And we're here, and the owner's here if you'd like any questions to ask. We plan on closing, on purchasing the property in the next 30 days.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff first? Questions from staff? Questions for staff? You're good? Go ahead, Mr. Roy.
So, it says development agreement, but this in essence, so I understand, is a ministerial action?
Yeah, in the sense that it's not subject to CEQA, yes.
Okay. And that they're not making any changes. So the extension going to 7 years, is that beyond any allowance that we have?
No, not using the tool of a development agreement. Most of the development agreements that we have in place are for a period of 25 years.
Okay.
So the 7-year request, staff thought was pretty reasonable, relatively speaking. We have linked it to the plot plan that was approved by Planning Commission. So that's why that number is specifically referenced, so that it shows this is what was approved, this is in compliance with what's addressed in the specific plan, and that's what it would be linked to. Like Mr. McDonald said, if there were any changes, we would then have to go back through CEQA review or possibly a specific plan amendment, which both would come to council for your consideration.
And at that point, if the work changes, conditions could be added at that point, and we could look at other EIRs?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And Christina, this is still consistent with the new upcoming general plan, right?
Yes.
Any questions for Mr. McDonald or the other? Mr. White?
I will have a question for Mr. McDonald, but let me ask staff a couple of questions. The original date of the agreement was the first agreement that we're extending 7 years?
So we don't have any agreements in place. The plot plan that we're going to link this development agreement to was from November of 2019. Oh, I'm sorry, 2018.
So we're extending the plot plan 7 years?
Yes, because
But
as
this
it's, oh, sorry.
But this is the creation of the first development agreement on
Yes,
this?
sir.
Okay. And the other major condition is the transferability of the development agreement. Okay. And there is no, I think Mr. McDonald brought this up, but there is no CFD, Melrose, EIFD, or any bond financing on this?
Nope.
Okay, and I just had 2 questions for Mr. McDonald. Your other 2 primary properties are Wolverine and Amazon, and all the infrastructure for that was also not built with any development fees, is that correct? I mean, the bond financing?
No bond financing, neither private or public, all cash.
Okay,
Streets are built.
and that's what the plan is for this property as well?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thought I'd mention one thing that's contained in here that's assuring for you. We have to, as all development agreements, submit a report card to you every year. So there's an annual review on whether we're behaving by the council.
Okay.
So that's a compliance matter contained in here.
So the reason I asked you about the previous development agreements here is because we have taken the approach that when we have development agreements that are 20, 25 years old and parties come to us and want us to open those or amend them, that at that point we can go in and remove any bond financing to them. So that was where my questions were coming from on this one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Christina, I had a question. When the planning commission does their discussion, I know we have their recommendation, but we don't seem to have any little synopsis of their discussion. Mr. McDonald brought up a point about them wanting changes. Can you make a quick comment on that?
I don't think they wanted any changes. What the planning commission's direction was, we've seen this 5 or 6 times already. We think this is a good idea because we don't want to see it again. Basically, it was, we know it can't change without coming back through the CEQA and the specific plan process. So they said, if this is what's intended to be built and this is what the applicant is wanting to build, then we think this is a good idea. Let's give them enough time to put this development together and build it.
Okay, I misunderstood. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if we have no further questions, I'll entertain a motion. I don't think I closed public hearing. Okay, my flu's getting to me. So we will, any further speakers? None? Then we'll close public hearing at 6:48 PM.
Make a motion to approve the development agreement plan 2019-0336.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, thank you. And with that, we're going to action items number 17, the consideration of First Amendment to Collection Services Agreement for the provision of residential and commercial garbage, recycling materials, and organic waste collection services between the City of Beaumont and Waste Management of the Inland Empire.
Your Honor, one of the attorneys in my law firm does unrelated work for waste management, and for that reason, I'm going to recuse myself.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Payton. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is an amendment to our contract with Waste Management. On May 7th of this year, City Council unanimously approved the collection agreement between the city and Waste Management, and on July 1st of this year, that contract went into effect. When the city and Waste Management negotiated the agreement, the parties only contemplated the collection of delinquent solid waste handling fees through the tax roll for single-family residences. In its current form, the agreement explicitly prohibits the city from placing delinquent solid waste handling fees for commercial and multifamily residential premises on the tax roll. At the November 19th City Council meeting, I presented the ordinance amendment where we discussed adding commercial and multifamily delinquent accounts to the tax roll in lieu of discontinuing service. The second reading of that ordinance was presented and approved tonight on consent. This contract amendment supports the ordinance and closes the loop. By approving this agreement, it is only an authorization for City Council to be able to place delinquent commercial and multifamily fees on the tax roll for some point in the future. When that time is upon us, we will bring before you the number of delinquent accounts along with the total fees being placed on the tax roll. At that time, City Council will have the opportunity to review and consider fees being placed and hear any protests impacted by property owners. Both the city and Waste Management believe it would be beneficial to authorize the collection of delinquent commercial and family delinquent fees on the tax roll. Such an amendment would also prevent the discontinuation of services to these premises in the event the fees go unpaid, which would help keep Beaumont beautiful, which is our ultimate goal. At this time, staff recommends the City Council approve the First Amendment of the Collection Services Agreement with Waste Management as it relates to commercial and multifamily. And I'm available for questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Public comment? Okay, so we'll open and close public comment at 6:51 PM. Questions from council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to approval of the First Amendment to Collection Services Agreement for the provisions of residential and commercial garbage, recyclable materials, and organic waste collections services between the City of Beaumont and Waste Management of the Inland Empire.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right, with that, item number 18, the award of contract for employee benefits insurance broker and consulting services.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather as well. You have before you a staff report with a recommendation for award of contract for employee benefits and insurance broker and consulting services. If you recall, back in June of this year, you authorized the release of an RFP. We posted our bid on public purchase as well as the city website. We received responses from 12 firms. We enacted a benefits committee, if you will, with representatives from each of the labor groups. We met on a regular basis. We identified the top 4 contenders, conducted interviews. From the 4, we narrowed it down to 3. We still really liked 3 of them. So we continued negotiations. Some of them brought different pool options, just different understandings of benefits from different angles. So we continued negotiations through November, actually, and the majority of the benefits committee recommended Quote Frontier, which is our existing broker. Those of you who know Ben Cloninger, who lives in town, small firm, has some other representatives in the area, some other local things, but we were able to negotiate with him and look at the high deductible plans that Mr. White had discussed when his wonderful book he was reading when he was stuck at the airport. We explored a lot of options with all the carriers, if you will, and kind of learned that what we'd been being told over the last few years was right on target with where the health market's going and what's going on. And those had high deductible plans, and our employees expressed an interest in continuing to pursue and look at those options to keep our costs down. So again, it wasn't unanimous, but it was a majority of the benefits committee that recommended that we stay with his firm. So we're asking for authorization, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you. Do we have public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, so we'll open and close public comment at 6:54. Questions from council? Mr. Lara?
Carrie,
Yes, sir.
last time this was done, we had the same participation from managers. Do we open it up like that before, or is this?
We've never done, as far as I could recall, we've never gone to bid for insurance broker services. Now, we've always had a benefits committee
Right.
that meets on an annual basis. Yes, that didn't change. But I couldn't find how, I went far, far back, and I could never find where we did a formal bid process for broker services. This is the first time.
Okay, well, and then the committee has always been made up of staff, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Every year when the options come in, when we look at different carriers, like last year, for example, there was an option to go with a carrier, but it was a complete takeover. So you had to leave another carrier, and the benefits we always let the labor groups weigh in regards to the healthcare choices, because I look at their MOU and their benefit packages, it's the cafeteria plan, some of it's their money. So we need to make sure they're getting the best deal for their money. So we've always had some input from them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to award professional services agreement to Quote Frontier and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the city of Beaumont for 3 years with the option of 2 one-year extensions.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos? Mayor Martinez?
Yes. And with that, item number 19, approve the resolution adopting by reference the pretreatment program enforcement response plan, pretreatment program procedures, and pretreatment program policies of the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second part of our second of 3 parts, well, I guess, the second of 3 parts that we have to do in order to meet all of our conditions with OCSD and be able to discharge into the brine line. Tonight you approved the second reading of the ordinance that was basically governing the discharge into the brine line. What this enforcement response plan and the policies and guidelines is basically what governs your commercial users, your significant dischargers, or any industrial dischargers. It's basically what our pretreatment program does today. As part of the ordinance, we've repealed our ordinance, which had portions of this in there, and then portions of that ordinance that we've now replaced it with. Basically, these are two separate documents, three separate documents. What we found was it was easier, instead of trying to cobble together what OCSD and SAPA would have liked to have seen to make sure that we were as stringent as they were, it was easier to repeal ours and just adopt theirs. And so that's what you're doing tonight. And the resolution also adopts theirs if they make any administrative changes, which their board allows, then ours will automatically update as well. And so we recommend that you approve this resolution adopting these. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. I have a meeting in the next week that I have to submit all of this stuff if we would choose to discharge into the brine line.
Thank you. Public comment?
None.
Okay, so open and close public comment at 6:58 PM. And do we have questions from council? No, we're good. Right. Then I'll entertain a motion. If so, I'll make the motion. So I was going to do it, it was too much to read. Waive the full reading and approve the title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont adopting by reference the Pretreatment Program Enforcement Response Plan, Pretreatment Program Policies, and Pretreatment Program Policies of the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority.
I'll second.
Oh, thank you.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Okay, with that, item number 20, approve a resolution prohibiting the provision of wastewater treatment services outside of the corporate boundaries of the City of Beaumont with certain exceptions.
Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you can see in the staff report, there were 4 conditions that OCSD imposed through SAPA onto the City of Beaumont for discharge into the Inland Empire brine line. The first one is to make sure that we did a multi-jurisdictional agreement. You did those back in February. Those were between us, SAPA, Western, Eastern. Some of that was about the transfer and the purchase of that brine line capacity. And so we completed that, all of that as of June. We did our portion much earlier, but we had some subsequent things that came after from other jurisdictions. The second part was to obtain sufficient resources in order to be able to adequately enforce the pretreatment, the policies and guidelines, and the enforcement response plan that you just adopted by resolution, as well as the ordinance. SAPA has hired staff. We are paying SAPA a portion of that staff person to help administer our program, so they will oversee what we do. We've also put together a detailed plan for them on how we are dealing with this internally through our staffing, so everything from the development process all the way up to dealing with our 5 industrial dischargers. The third one was to make sure that all of our pretreatment documents were in order. So we just finished that with the last item. We've now adopted all of the correct documents, and we will be submitting those. And then the last condition is something that they posed to us in the meeting when the city manager and I went down and met with them, which was, how are you going to enforce your pretreatment outside of your jurisdictional limits? And what we reported to them was we would make sure that anybody requesting service outside of our jurisdictional limits would go through the annexation process to come into the corporate limits. At that time, we didn't know that we were not familiar with the agreement that we have to serve those Calamasa properties. We've since worked that through them. But the one thing that they asked is, how are you going to do this? And so our response was, we felt like the council would say, people need to annex in. So they asked that the council formally adopt a resolution indicating that you did not intend to serve outside of your jurisdictional limits. Why that's important to them is you can't enforce your pretreatment documents that you just adopted outside your corporate boundaries. You don't have that authority. And so this becomes a really important piece for OCSD to make sure that we're controlling anything that comes into our plant that is getting treated and then discharged as brine, because brine is basically all the waste that comes from the treatment process, which we're discharging down to Orange County. So the resolution before you tonight does make certain exceptions for the couple of developments that are outside of your jurisdiction that we currently serve today, and basically says that those could not redevelop without coming into. So right now they're residential. If they chose to go to commercial, someone came in and bought up 15 houses and wanted to do a commercial project, they would be required to come into the city limits in order to get that commercial tie-in at that point. So redevelopment would basically force the annexation. And then the second part of your resolution also talks about the Calamasa. So we are conditionally, through this settlement agreement, required to serve these two properties. What we have worked out with OCSD and SAPA is that you will enter into a multi-jurisdictional agreement on those two properties. It'll be between the city of Beaumont, the city of Calamasa, and the developer that will allow you to enforce your pretreatment in the city of Calamasa. Calamasa giving that authority to you.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So, happy to answer any questions. Basically, in a nutshell, that's what this is about.
All right, thank you. Public comment?
No.
Okay, so open and close public comment at 7:04 p.m. Questions? Ms. Carroll?
So with the two situations, for instance, with Calamasa that you mentioned, so how do we monitor their compliance? I understand that we get into a agreement, but how do we know that everything is in order?
So part of the agreement will put us into the development process. And so just as we do with any of our developments, we do industrial surveys. And so when a development comes through, whether it's a plot plan or a business license or a building permit, they are handed a packet that they have to fill out for wastewater. And basically the first section of that is to determine what type of user they are. If they're commercial and we can answer all the questions and they filled in all the blanks, check, check, they get to go through the process. If they are industrial, CJ Foods, Pericone, Rudolph Foods, then we go to the next level, which becomes a much more in-depth survey, and then ultimately to a pretreatment permit. And right now, those two developments are not industrial. They're all commercial developments. So it will be important that we're catching things like grease traps and items like that, because the fog that can come through, the grease and the oils that can come through from a restaurant, a fast food establishment, those get into our system and cause some havoc that we don't need. So it's important that we're seeing those, but I don't anticipate that we're going to have a significant discharger there. And your settlement agreement actually locks down what they can and can't do on those parcels in terms of the zoning.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. White?
The two properties in Calamasa, where are they?
They are just north of Desert Lawn, kind of towards
Where the new Stater Brothers?
Yeah, back of that.
Okay.
One of them is being developed for an RV park, and in talking with Calamasa even as late as today, they're adjacent to the mobile home park that's right there off of Desert Lawn. And so they have some connection challenges, and they've chosen and worked out with the regional water board not to connect into our system at this time. Their numbers don't pencil. The other one is just on the, and I'm bad at north, south, east, west. I can visualize it, which is why I'm going like this. North, it's north to me, yeah. And that particular is assisted living facility, smaller hotel type development.
So that's the one across from the elementary school? And then the other property is next to Plantation on the Lakes?
Yes.
So this does not include the retail development that is coming off of Cherry Valley that's in Calamasa?
No,
Okay.
it is not.
So those are the two properties that you're talking about that are outside our jurisdiction. What about the current plantation on the lakes and Highland Springs, those are not impacted or affected by this agreement?
They are not in the sense that as long as they maintain their current zoning status, which is residential or the small conference facility that they have up there, those will be able to remain. If they ever choose to redevelop those properties, you would require them at that point to come in.
And when you mean, so right now we're not monitoring their contributions into the sewer system?
So Plantation on the Lakes is typical residential development.
Okay.
And so we monitor in terms of the flow that comes in, but there's really no surveys per se to do because again, it's residential development. And we kind of have an idea of what residential puts into the system.
Okay.
The Highland Springs, the convention facility, we know what's there, and so we have the ability to somewhat monitor that. But again, if it's a redevelopment, so if they chose to take half of that property and redevelop into, a multi-key hotel or something like that, we're going to tag them at that point and tell them no, that connection would not be allowed.
So those two properties are the ones that I know about. Are there others that I don't know about that are outside our?
Those are the two properties that I was speaking of. Yes, sir.
But I'm saying the two that I brought up, Plantation and the Highland Springs, there's no others that are like that right now
Not
that are.
that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, thank you.
The RV park is not tying in, correct?
The RV park that Calamasa is going to put in,
Right.
they are not planning to tie in as of today when I was talking with Calamasa.
Their problem is we will not allow them to do a dump station because that's an uncontrolled source into your system, and by policy and guidelines, you're not allowed to do that. The second part that they have is they don't have a good route to get to us, and they're really talking about a couple of restrooms. And so when we sat and met with a developer, we encouraged them to go talk about other options.
Okay.
And because I understand it doesn't make sense to pencil 2 restrooms. They would have either come through Plantation on the Lakes and taken their capacity, or they have to come down Desert Lawn, which is a pretty long stretch and probably, again, without going through an engineering study, my guess would involve some lift stations and things like that. Not going to get a lot of flow out of a couple of restrooms. So at this point, their intention is to do basically like a septic type facility, but it won't be septic. It'll be a closed septic system that they're going to have to pump and haul.
Okay. So we still have jurisdiction as to whether we allow or in what we allow?
Yes.
Even through the MOU that we have? Or?
Through the settlement agreement?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
But I don't.
Oh, we've all talked, raise, okay.
Okay. 2 clarification point. One, you talked about the RV and you talked about Plantation on the Lake. Now, at one point, Plantation on the Lake was on septic before it went to sewer. And there was some concern that having that septic system was endangering the water quality that was in that area. So I'm sure you can tell me why we're not going to be concerned about the RV park affecting the water quality if they choose to go to a septic system.
It'll be a closed septic system, which means it won't discharge or percolate into the ground.
Okay.
It'll basically be like a tank. And they'll pump that and take that to a facility, I believe the closest one is San Bernardino. And they'll be able to dump it at the wastewater facility there.
All right, thank you. That clarifies that. And then the second one, you were talking about the area outside of the city limits, such as Highland Springs. Are you talking about Highland Springs Resort? Or are you talking about that Highland Springs Country Club? Or is the answer yes to both of those?
Highland Springs Resort.
Okay, so the Highland Springs, that country club, that community, they're outside of the city limits. So
that makes the third.
Okay. And then the mobile home park that's to the west of the resort, that is on sewer, I believe, right?
I feel a little lost. I don't have my wonderful
sorry.
map in front of me.
Well, I was trying to draw the pictures
And I
like
need
you
my
were.
map for every sewer discussion I have.
All right.
So I could answer that if I had that in front of me.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So there are a couple more.
All right, so that is all in that sphere outside of the city that we're talking about incorporating into this now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, then, I'll entertain a motion to, well, it's a receive and file. No, it's not.
No.
Where am I?
Mayor, I make a motion to
Thank you.
waive the full reading and approve by title only resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont prohibiting the provision of wastewater treatment services outside of the corporate boundaries of the City of Beaumont with certain exceptions.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor Protem Santos, Mayor Martinez.
Yes. And with that, item number 21, wastewater treatment plant expansion and renovation and brine pipeline installation project status update.
I'll try to make this one shorter. So we have obtained some more distances on Reach 1 and Reach 2. We're at about 65,500 and 47.7 on the two brine lines respectively. Not a lot happened last week on Thanksgiving, and so both contractors took some days with their crews. And then obviously we had some wet weather days as we're having again this week. So that will impact some of our items, and you'll see a few more of those days come back to you on your report the next month. The good news is most of our trenching was done, most of our pipe is in. We're really talking about bore pits and receiving pits at this point. Your change order to date are on your sheet, as well as your permits and your project accounting. At the treatment plant, we have a whole host of things that have been going on. We're starting to finish out the interior of the building. We were picking finished colors last week before last. It's going to be a very nice building for even a wastewater building. So Thaxton's very excited. We've lined up all of our colors, but they're doing quite a bit of things, and we are working. Probably one of the biggest things we still need to work out is the reuse connection with Beaumont Cherry Valley. Late this afternoon, I got their most recent report. We're talking about several connections into what were your old clarifiers that will be your reuse storage. Those tie-ins will manifold back together, and somehow we get that out to the street to get into their system. I think we're very close to having a resolution for that, and you guys should start to begin your meetings again. Beaumont Cherry Valley has several things that they'll need to do. Our Title 22 report that has been submitted on your behalf has been reviewed by the Regional Water Board and is going through some back and forth with our engineer. Our permit, we have not heard anything back from them on that, but I expect that that will start to spin up after the first of the year. We are preparing to discharge and run the new plant as early as summer of next year. And so I believe you'll start to see some of those items come back, or at least we'll report to you that those items are complete. We really are nearing, I can almost see a finish line. And so we've done a great job, I think, of ticking off all the items to get you ready to discharge into the brine line and run your new plant. As seen, we did have some, we had some rain last week. We saw some increased flows at the plant, and just from the 2-inch rain. It seems to be a holiday thing for us. We've now hit Valentine's Day and Thanksgiving, so I'm hoping Christmas is a little bit slower this year. But again, I think they're doing really well out there. We are up out of the ground for the most part. A little bit of a mess. We had a nice delivery on Thanksgiving Day. Made a little bit of a spectacle out there, but overall, things are going very well. Your accounting and your change orders are in here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And it's your report.
And by the way, that's 21 out of 23 miles of Brine Line construction.
Wow, I can see you're seeing
Been exciting.
finish line. All right, thank you.
Very salty project.
Salty.
Any public
Will
comment?
be.
No, okay. Council questions, concerns, discussion, Mr. White?
So we're on time and under budget.
We are on time for the regional, we asked for the 6-month extension, so I think we will beat that.
Okay.
Is where my fingers are crossed for coming into the rainy season, so I'd like to caveat that. And yes, as of right now, we're under budget. We don't foresee anything. We have satisfied AQMD. There may be a few things. We're looking at the UV. I think that with the Title 22 report, they've asked for some additional data on the UV treatment system. I think we'll be able to satisfy that. If not, we'll be in front of you letting you know that. But we should be under budget.
Thank you.
And Christine guaranteed me that by the end of the project, we'd have enough money to design the ultimate plant expansion. Isn't that right, Christine?
I don't recall that conversation. And I think he has the flu and is a little fuzzy. We still have the phase 2 of the plant, so I want to reserve that. But I think we're going to come in for as much as we had some, I don't want to say heartburn, but a lot of unknowns on 23 miles of brine line. Our 2 contractors have done phenomenal. We had some water dewatering issues. You know, we have just recently, I got an email today that we encountered an unknown line in Hunt's Lane. And so we're having to work through those. But even in all of those work throughs, your contractors, and it's not often you get to the end of the job and everyone's still singing Kumbaya. We're still there right now. So keeping my fingers crossed.
Very well. Okay, any further comments?
Just a quick comment on the brine line. I mean, looking on the numbers in here, it shows like, you know, on the numbers itself is 75% completion. Is that on the brine line? I mean, looking on this one here right now, so.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit further than 75%.
Good.
We have 23 miles of brine line. We're at 21 miles.
Wow.
So,
Okay,
so we're
10%.
a little bit closer than that. We still have several of the connections across the rivers. And the biggest concern I have right now, if the rain doesn't stop, is how we connect to the East Street Bridge. That could cause you a huge delay. We were hoping to beat that rainy season. We had some material lead items that needed to be done. And so I'm trying to paint you the picture opposite of your traffic signals. Like doom and gloom, and then when we're able to do it, it's great. We will not be putting any signs up with dates on them.
Just pictures.
My next is the, you know, I drove by on the water treatment in there. I saw the buildings, beautiful, man. I was getting there now. I mean, now looking on the numbers again in here, looking like we're 50% completion or 55% completion. Is that correct? I mean,
overall, yes.
Yeah.
So there are 2 phases. So we're much further along in phase 1, which will be the ultimate original, bring the plan up, run it on its new system, and then we have some kind of secondary phase 2 items that are not items that were to meet your compliance order. So we're probably closer to 70% on phase 1, 50% overall.
wow.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
I know. I was looking at the numbers in
It's
here.
a train.
And then lastly is I really like to say you guys is doing so great. I mean, you know, I drove by there once a week and seeing the progress, not inside, I mean, the exterior and that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I'll take a moment to brag on our staff. You know, I think our contractors are doing great, but you hired a staff that is operating this plant better than the plant they came from with the MBR and RO technology. They're producing cleaner water with the old technology than they were getting to produce at their new. And so your staff is doing, it's amazing what we're able to do with our existing plant and be under construction. I mean, those guys are working really, really hard, not only at the plant, but throughout the entire collection system. You're saving, in my estimate, you're saving a ton of money on them being out in your system. They're putting pumps in for you. They're making sure your lift stations are working. Those guys they take a lot of pride in your system for you. And I couldn't be more pleased with the staff that we ended up getting.
Very good.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
All right, any other comments?
And I'd like to make a motion to receive and file.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes.
And if I have one more comment real quick on that is we've come up with a conceptual concept with the water district on how to collect and disperse gravity flow water, the recycled Title 22 water to a site that we'll be reserving for them on our property, which is immediately adjacent to this, which is the existing community services building. So our plan, Dan and I, is to try to meet within the next week or two to kind of begin to iron out the next agenda for our next 2x2. So I know coming up in January, y'all are going to have 2x2 appointments potentially to discuss that contract with the district. So we're getting close to needing to start those conversations with the 2x2 on that final contract.
Thank you. All right, I'll take a motion to receive and file, or do we do that?
Yes, we did do it. I already thanked you.
Oh, yeah, I'm going fast.
We'll do it twice.
All right, so we are on item 22. The appointment of mayor and mayor pro tem, and I'm going fast, so it's probably a good idea here. I just want to say before we start that I do thank council for giving me the opportunity to be the mayor for 2019. I learned a lot. I worked closely with staff and the residents, and I learned a lot. And I believe I represented the city truthfully and honorably, and I hope that the residents have appreciated the accomplishments and the progress that we've made. I look forward to another year of transparency and progress. And although I think I've set the standard for the 40-minute state of the city presentation, we'll see how that goes. I know the next mayor is going to continue the goals and the direction of the current council. So with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mayor Pro Tem Ray Santos as mayor and Councilmember Mike Lara as mayor pro tem.
I'll second that.
I'd like to have just a little bit of discussion.
All right, my first question is, do we have public comment?
No.
Okay, and then we'll have a motion on the floor, so we'll take quick comment.
Okay. So I would second that if it hadn't been second, and I will be voting for both Mayor Pro Tem Santos and Councilmember Lara. When I first got on council, first of all, I do want to make another quick comment. You had a great presentation, State of the City. I think you've done a great job over the last year. Your presentation at the Veterans Day is something that I will remember for a long time, and something that you've done that I hope that Mr. Santos can exceed you by is we've had extremely shorter council meetings over the last year. And so I really like that. You've set a really high bar for that one. So here's my concern about the process. When I first got on council, and Michael remember this, and both, actually Julio, I think you were there, you might not have been there, but Nancy was there. The old council would just come up and they made a nomination of both the mayor and the mayor pro tem at one time. And I expressed a concern about that at that time, because I think you take them one at a time. You take the mayor first, and then you do the mayor pro tem as a second choice. And it seems like we're getting back to, I think we're all honoring and we're all in favor of a rotation and sticking to the rotation and giving everyone a chance and opportunity to be mayor. But I would just like to reconsider in next year's, hopefully I'm not here next year, but In next year's, yes, that next year's policy, we go back to doing the mayor in one motion and then the mayor pro tem in a second motion. So other than that, that's the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So, if there are no further comments, I have a motion in a second.
Just
Another one?
one quick comment.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just want to echo Councilmember White's compliments on the job that you did as mayor. Mr. Santos has got some big shoes to fill.
Yes.
I think the bar was set very high, and congratulations on your year. Good job.
Appreciate that.
Well, since everybody's making comments before we actually move on this, I think you've done an extraordinary job. I think you've treated the role with the ultimate professionalism. You've always considered all of the council and everything that you've done to make sure that everybody's concerns were aired. And you've been very respectful of the public and staff. I know Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Santos is a great guy, but I do have to say you have left a very intimidating shadow. So you've done a great job.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, it's been a great ride, and I've enjoyed it. And, I look forward to doing it again in the future, really. But thank you.
Quick comment on this. I mean,
Keep it-
yeah, I'll echo everybody in here. I mean, it's really a big shoes to fit in. And, he's a very professional individual. And every time he's not available, I mean, he see to it that somebody will cover, any event we will have in there. And I don't hesitate to say no on that. I mean, I said yes right away. So, because just like, Councilwoman, Nancy Carroll said that, he's really, really professional individual to work with. So, we're gonna miss that, and then, I have to, work harder than she usually here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, and with that, roll call.
Okay, Councilmember White,
I guess so.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Councilmember Carroll,
Definitely.
Mayor Pro Tem Santos,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes.
I guess I have to change and practice the new roll call
Well,
for
I
next
guess
time.
I'm
Yes, sir.
probably going to run the workshop, I guess, for a couple of
Oh,
weeks.
that's right.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you'll officially take over in January. So congratulations. Yes. All right.
So who adjourns the meeting?
Still going to use the power of last minute. We do have item for any future agenda items. Anybody want to chime in on that? If not, we can make the 7:30 before the clock changes tonight. All right, with that, we'll adjourn at 7:30.